Okay, and greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Want to remind everybody hit the like, share, and subscribe button for me. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody that wants to share some love. Always appreciated. And of course, the StreamYard link is there for anybody that wants to join the panel. And we got John with us again tonight. How you doing tonight, John?
Doing good. Doing real good.
Good, good.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, John. We're talking about the Matrix of Liberty tonight. What do you think the matrix of liberty is? What are the foundational principles that you use in your life to stand as a true man under good morals?
I think full understanding of the situation, and I think it's right here. You can see me do it.
Yeah, right in the
Uh,
heart.
yep, it's the moral base, and it's our full understanding of what's going on. Those are the two.
So you would say in agreement then, as I've said many times, Jose 4:6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Therefore, the true foundation of benefit is the knowledge, and that's the only way we can correct anything is through knowledge. So we have to have that moral foundation ourselves. All right.
Uh, yeah, a lot of people say love is the first thing in life, and I agree with that. But I think it's one level deeper. I think it's a moral foundation, and it's full understanding of what's going on.
Yep. Live by law or love. And that's essentially, what drives law is the love. You have to have love in your heart to be able to see that something is wrong, to be able to regulate it so it doesn't happen again. If everybody was heathens, then there wouldn't be anything wrong. It'd be working perfect for everybody. Everybody wanting to be heathens and wanting to hurt and kill. And that's why I say I don't think that's the nature of man. I think the nature of man is truly caring and loving for each other. And then in that, we find certain ones that don't know that, don't stick to it or whatever. And then we're consecrated to making laws. And that's the thing about the law is made for the lawless. And we got Dean with us tonight. How you doing tonight, Gene?
Doing well, brother. How are you?
I am well. I'm well. Got some chicken to finish up. I was running late. I had to take a nap this afternoon and didn't get up early enough to do everything, so I'm running behind.
I
But
take naps every day, dude. I don't know how you don't. I mean, I'm tired all the time. People say, "Are you retired?" I say, "I get retired every day." What are you fucking talking about?
yeah. So I'm glad you're with us, Dean, because I think you have a good concept on this thing about liberty, the matrix of liberty. And I just asked John what his thought of it was. What does he think of when we think of the term matrix of liberty? What is the foundation of a good man with good standing and good morals?
I got no fucking clue. I'll tell you that. But I'll tell you what I'm doing is I'm doing the best I know each and every day with what I got to work with. And I'm trying to love my fellow man as I love myself. And when people reach out to me for help, I want to help. And I want to do as much as I can, even if it means I'm giving up these doll hairs that I require to survive as well. But they're just this ephemeral thing. Why should they mean shit to me other than if it can help somebody? And I
Yeah.
want to help people, but I mean, I would also be draining my bank account on some level if I could, because that's what people need and want, apparently, to make their lives better for whatever reason. And so there's this, you still got to fight that. I got to fight this ability to this desire to drain my bank account because I kind of still need it. You know what I mean? Which sucks. I'm
I
not
hear
even
you.
able to pursue the happiness I want to pursue because I'm limited by this construct that we're thrown into. That I'm doing the best I can to get by with. But many out there would tell you what a fucking loser failure I am because I don't have A, B, C, a mansion, or any other fucking nonsense that could go with it if I was making merchandise of my fellow man, which I don't want to do. I don't want to do it all.
Yeah, and that's
So
that's one of the things Dean and I are big on is that this commercial system is a driving mechanism for slavery of all kind, and that's the making merchandise of other men. And it tells us strictly not to do that in the scripture. And not only that, we're not supposed to take up surety for another man either. He who hateth suretyship is sure. And instead of bringing out all these laws and everything for the lawless, which is basically what we've got. And it seems that they think the law applies to everybody because everybody's lawless.
I just heard that today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what we have to remember is that if you're truly you truly have a mindset of having liberty, the process of that is just like the knowledge. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, and so we're supposed to share the knowledge. Well, we're going to find out that that's basically what this thing of matrix of liberty is. You have to have the knowledge of what your rights are in order to enforce them, and you're the only one that can do that. No one else ever will. So it comes down to that base foundation of knowledge. What do you know, and how can you act on it?
And that's what goes right back to what allegedly Benjamin Franklin said. We gave you a republic if you can keep it.
Yep, I've been
We
repeating
have to
that.
keep it for ourselves, right? That's what it boils down to. And that's what they don't teach us when we're younger, that it's up to you to know this and to stand on it. And it's amazing how many years it took to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I've been repeating a lot lately, and I hope it's soaking into people. You have a republic if you can keep it, but the only way you can keep a republic is with a body of people that know the law. When the body of people no longer understand or comprehend what the law is, they're just following directions of the heathen dictators. So let's.
So, and the reason I slightly hesitated on the word love is because you can love to drink and do drugs.
Yes. So let's get into it. I've got this thing. It's called Matrix of Liberty. If you guys aren't familiar with it, it's a statue out in Pennsylvania. And so we're going to take a look at this. This is from the era of the Pilgrims in the early 1500s when they built this as a foundational structure or construct for this nation. And this is technically what the nation's founders were supposed to be drawing up in these documentation. The foundational documentations were supposed to be based on these principles. So let's take a look at it. And it's literally called, it's a national monument to the forefathers, and it's literally called the Matrix of Liberty. And bear with me, I know it's corny music and it's text on a screen at the moment, but we'll get into the rest of it here after the first 5 minutes or so, or 3-4 minutes, whatever. We'll be done with the text and we'll go into a story here as the narrator tells. Why? Because their matrix is constructed from layers of lies. The truth destroys their matrix.
One of the things I was particularly intrigued by and shocked by was a test which is given to all people, legal immigrants, who want to be citizens of the United States. It's a very basic test.
Let me slow that down. Do that one more time. A plan hidden in plain sight. Humanity's enemies have a long history of hiding truth. Why? Because their matrix is constructed from layers and layers of lies. The truth destroys the matrix.
One of the things I was particularly intrigued by and shocked by was a test which is given to all people, legal immigrants, who want to be citizens.
This is that civil test that I was telling you about. The immigrants have to take a civil test. They have to take they have to pass it in order to get their immigration documentation. This is the thing that's missing in high school. They placate that the public education system here for the American people is good enough and qualified, but people don't really get to learn the history as it should be. And this guy's going to tell us about some amazing statistics here recently.
Of the United States. It's a very basic test. And this particular test, Craig, was given to a huge number of public school students across the United States. I hope most people are sitting down, because when you learn the stats, it's shocking. Only 1 in 4 could name George Washington as the first president of the United States of America. Less than 10% knew that there are 9 members of the United States Supreme Court.
Yep, sure thing. Happy to send out 15 recap emails from meetings I wasn't on. A third.
And not even 30% knew that the president of the United States is the head of the executive branch of government. The question is, why?
Those are 3 basic questions that everybody on this on this soil should know. Those are basic foundational elements of the history of this nation. But again, remember, folks, I call history as a narcissistic story. It's the story of the victor over the victim. So keep that in mind. But at the same time, the basic data facts are not even comprehended because I wonder if they're even taught in school. Now I learned this stuff.
It is literally his story. Now I don't know who he or his is, but it ain't the true thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say we have to be very careful of the history that we've been taught as well as the history we continue to teach. It's building a narcissistic society that thinks that they're do certain things in life no matter how insane they get. So as a trans man, it's due in his life that everybody call him a she, her, they pronoun of some sort. No, it's not. That's not the way it works, folks. This is getting to be insane, and we have to stop it.
And what I found is that there have been a number of people who willfully wanted to erase the American story.
The tallest solid granite statue in America is the National Monument to the Forefathers. That's the tallest solid granite monument. It was designed by the Mayflower Pilgrims. It took 70 years to erect. Yet few are aware of its existence. The truth is, it's been kept hidden because it provides a plan for how to preserve liberty down through the generations. This is Kirk Cameron and Dr. Marshall Foster.
What do we do? How do we get back to that?
Now, when the children of Israel going into the Promised Land, they crossed the Jordan River, and God stood on end, and they walked across. And before the waters stopped parting, God told them to take 12 stones from the bottom of the river.
12 seems to be a repetitive number. 12 stones. Remember that.
And put it up on the top of Mount Gilgal and make a monument, so that when your children ask, "What are these stones?" you'll be able to tell them, this is where God parted the sea. And that's what the Pilgrims left us. They left us a monument that not only gives tribute to what was accomplished here, but it gives us a specific strategy, a breakout of a blueprint of if we would ever forget what made America great, what made us free, we can go back and follow that strategy, and it's right up on a hill, a half mile from here.
This thing is huge.
It's 180 tons of solid granite. It's the largest granite monument in America, and it's hidden on a hilltop overlooking Plymouth in a residential neighborhood.
I've never heard of this.
Hardly anybody in America knows about it, and yet the people of America put this together over a 70-year period as a strategy laid out and called the Matrix of Liberty that was given to us by the forefathers, by the Pilgrims.
And my apologies, I stated Pennsylvania earlier. I don't know how that came out. I meant Plymouth. It is Plymouth.
And those 130 years ago, when they built this, wanted to leave this behind for us, so that if we would ever forget how liberty is built, we would know what to do to regain it. This is it, the only successful strategy of liberty that has ever been carried out in the history of mankind. Well, let's walk through it. What does this mean? What are they trying to tell us here?
So where do you
Well,
start?
her name is Faith. It says so right there.
So the first foundation of liberty is faith. What do you guys think?
That was the last thing the faith was the last thing I came to in this life, in this world. I mean, I could tell the story, but it's not, not germane right now. Just my life has shown me, has led me to faith. I did not have it starting out, you know what I mean? So anyway, for me, it was something I had to come to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the same thing here. I couldn't really call it faith in my younger days when I was going around saying, fuck you, you ain't my daddy. I just knew there wasn't something right. In my adult life, I came to understand that that's a form of faith, that something's there intuitively and instinctually that says that something is wrong. So we have to right it. So again, that's that thing, and the law is made for the lawless. And those that have good faith in their heart can see there's something wrong. So good point.
Faith is in churches.
Yeah, gathering numbers. A lot of people.
Right. I couldn't just jump into what everybody else was doing. I just couldn't do it based on the information they were providing me. Their reasonings, their whys. It was like, this is all nonsense. What are you talking about? I was raised in a Catholic world too. So there was this expectation to just believe what we tell you. And I'm like, no. But I wanted to be too good. I wanted to be good for my mother. I did not want to cause problems. So I had this mindset of not openly, like you said, like you did, questioning everything. I admire that in you, Keith, that you were doing that from a young age. At a young age, I just kind of went along to get along because it seemed to be the way to keep everybody happy. I wanted people to be happy. You know, I wanted to please these people.
Yeah, and
But
that's
that was not the way to go, really.
well, yeah, and I think that's because we've gotten to a point in this society that we're bringing our children up that way, that you have to make other people happy. That's not your job. Life is not about being happy. Life is a test. And if you can find happiness in there, great. But in the meantime, remember, there are certain things that we have to comprehend in order to get along in a close society. And it certainly isn't just making each other happy.
Well, but
There,
pursuing it is not a bad goal to have. I mean, what else are we to do? I mean, if I can't find my happy place, even you're right in regards to the liberty. As I don't know how this is coming. I'm very interested in this video you're playing, but I'd like to hear it out. But yeah, obviously, pursuing that happiness makes sense to me. But it's again not at the cost of others, or as at least at the cost of others as possible.
right.
You know?
That's what we're talking about because it's good to make people happy, but if you have to make your mom happy by making 10 other people um, or placing a detriment or something like that on 10 other people, then that's not a real, quote, cost effective thing when it comes to your own private life. It could come
Correct.
back to bite you. And that's
Yeah,
why
yeah.
we have to really think about these groups or gatherings that we get into and think about them. Even as my own maternal parents and family members and stuff, after I reflect back on them, they really didn't have that foundation either, and they were misled. So it's a generational thing, just like it said earlier. For the future generations, we have to start fixing things because the way it's going now, we're going to have insane grandchildren that are born in asylums if you don't get the picture now.
And she is pointing her finger to heaven. Why?
For God is.
For God is, because her faith is in the God of the Bible, in Jesus Christ. They knew that the only faith that could bring true liberty was a faith in the one true God and his Bible. And you see a Bible there, an open Bible. It's a Geneva Bible. The pages are opened up, which meant that they read it. And as they read it, and as they had faith in God, he gave them wisdom. That's why you see the star on her forehead.
And so understand, this is the Geneva Bible, not the King James Version. This is before 1611. So this is the Geneva Bible, and this is where they get the principles. Now, these principles are still found in the King James Version of the Bible, but remember, this is a principle. So it has nothing to do with the scriptures themselves, but the principles that the people can see in their lives because of those scriptures and things like that. It should be a natural known.
Well, it is known because it's at the beginning of every state constitution, some sort of grateful to the creator for our liberties. And I'm paraphrasing, the supreme ruler of the universe. This is exactly what she's pointing to the very top of every state constitution out there.
Yep.
Every one of them.
Absolutely.
She's given wisdom to know how to live in this world. And all of the rest of these statues, each one weighing almost 20 tons, is tied to faith, because without faith, it falls apart. And that's the beginning of it all.
Where do we go from there?
From here, you need to go to character or morality, and you'll notice
Because that's the internal liberty.
that is the internal liberty, which is the beginning of all freedom. She is called.
Okay, so it's got a statute with a foundation of 4 corners, and on all 4 sides, there's another smaller statute. So that's what we're looking at now, is one of the smaller statutes.
Morality. Notice that she has no eyes. That is on purpose, because she's looking internal character, the transformation of the heart first, and then that brings external transformation. And notice that she has the 10 Commandments in her left hand and the scroll of Revelation in the right. What would that signify?
The Bible.
Exactly. That if you want.
Also, notice, see if I can get back to it right there. Notice the thing here as on her breast, her chest. Does that remind you of the breastplate of Aaron with 12? Again, 12 parts. So think about that, folks.
And more than that, there has to be an internal transformation. This is speaking of the need to internalize and allow God to change our hearts and our minds first.
Because in England, you had top-down morality imposed on people. Do this, do that. You're moralizing people, but you're saying their morality started in the heart.
In the heart. It had to be.
Exactly. See, that's what Dean and I were just discussing when trying to make other people happy. We're going about it the wrong way. We're trying to shove morality down people's throats, when all it really takes is discernment and learning how to deal with those people.
And this is written on our hearts per the Bible. It's biblical scripture says the law was written on our hearts. We know in our hearts to not hurt other people. We know to not harm other people. You know that that's wrong. Everybody knows that that's wrong. At a lot, you know what I mean? It's tapping into that morality, this character they're talking about.
Absolutely.
He changed here. They realized inside, just because you said you were a member of a church like the Church of England didn't make you a Christian. And you see this over on the side. The side statues give an explanation of what the meaning of this is for us. That's why we need the evangelist. You see the evangel here writing down the Gospels. And there's a need for evangelists. Why? Because we need to have the gospel of the great liberating gospel of Christ that says he came to set us free first.
So this is completely contrary to the way the rest of the world had done it up to this point. The pilgrim.
And so when it comes to the evangelist, that's the actions and the words. That's the spreading of the kindness, the caring, the love, because that's what's written on your heart. That's what we're at. That's what we're gospeling. And that's what we're ministering.
Are saying that morality starts internally with the gospel. The evangelist has to preach the message that transforms the heart, and then you want to do what's right, rather than being forced to do what's right from the king who tells you what good and bad is.
That's it.
Okay, what's next?
What's next is, and you see the development of it, if you want to have a free civilization, you need to have civil authority or civil law that will give a base for that freedom. In other words, you've got to have some degree of order in society. And that order, as you see here, is built upon law. The principles of God's law then are related into the civil law. And that's what we see here in his left hand.
And that's what I was talking about. The law is written for the lawless. If you have a morality in your heart already, you don't have to have the moral laws shoved down your throat. Because that's what they are. They're laws about morality. If you're traveling down the road and you're speeding, you're doing 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, they're checking you for your morality, your common sense. Hey, everybody else is traveling 25 miles an hour. You're doing 10 miles an hour over, which is actually a little bit dangerous. Yes, that was dope. You want to do right as opposed to being forced to do right. Absolutely.
Apparently it was dangerous to tell a cop that she was out of line and that she was responsible for the harm she caused me, and to tell her that in a letter because they call that extortion, even though it's kind of what they do. So, you know, it's pretty wild.
Absolutely. And again, that goes to that the law is made for the lawless because they don't have that moral aptitude.
Well, how can they? They're incompetent. They're crazy. It's in their own rules. It tells them they're fucking nuts. Because male is female and past is present and singular is plural. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy town.
Yeah, they're taking us from a singularity and placing us in a duality or plurality. And that's forcing us to accept other people in our lives, whether they're moral or not. And it's a social construct for contracts. That's all it is. Again, contracting morality.
And his right hand is extended in mercy. Mercy toward those that he's dealing justice with. Why? Because this form of law has a degree of equity in it. You see this in the side statutes where justice. She's holding the scales of justice with justice and equity, which means that, you know, when a crime is committed, it should be cared for in terms of its punishment. The same for the rich and for the poor and for everyone else. There should be equality under the law. On the other side, we notice that this form of law is different than the laws of so many nations that are built on tyrants, that are built on, if the Aztecs wanted to cut your heart out, they just cut your heart out. Here, mercy built upon the base that he offers us, mercy and grace, along with law. And in this form of law, there is that tremendous mercy.
And this came from the confluence of the Old Testament to the New Testament. They realized that if God was such a moral being, he wouldn't want anything in return except for our words and actions to be true. The basic moral foundation. And so, again, it wasn't something that was American or anything or Christian or anything like. It was a base foundation of recognizing throughout history that things change. But the reason they change is because people are constantly trying to make things better, not worse. It's only because of the tyrants that things get worse.
So you have to start with faith. Faith in the true
Morals
God that
mean
produces
we
the
have
internal
more.
morality of the heart. You have
Say what?
Morals mean that we have more. They have to play by the written rules, not us.
Right. When we understand that the law is written for the lawless, and those that want to play in that popularity game and be the king of the lawless, then we'll understand it better.
However, what he's talking about, the written word, brings up the Bar Association that wrote all this stuff. And the problem with the American language is because there's so many different definitions for every word, it is just babble. The whole thing is babble. And we're stuck in this babble.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part, is staying out of it.
Yeah, and that's what I've explained many times. English is the new Babylonian language. And despite anybody else's thoughts about it, I think it's a beautiful language because once you learn it, it shows that you've reached a certain point that you're not manipulating, but you're able to untwist the things that are used to manipulate you.
a standard
Yeah,
by
and
which
you're
to
right. It is a beautiful language because there's so many different words for so many different situations. I mean, I've heard enough times in my life, you use a lot of big words. And it's like, no, I just use words. What are you talking about? You know, I mean, yeah. Anyway, what do you do?
Yeah.
To judge what good and bad is, and then you create a moral system of law to have a basis for a free and just society that can mete out justice when crimes are committed, but also extend mercy to people and show them grace.
And then that gives you the freedom. Once you have a society that's built like this, now you have a civility in society. Now you.
And that's the problem. Again, like I said, when you have a body of people that mete out justice and mercy, you're going to that gathering, and that's the wrong church. Again, the church should be singularly in your heart already. And that's what we should be raising our children up to reach those talents.
The civility he's talking about in this clip is not present in this system. That is less than civil. I'm sorry, putting a man in a cage for any time at all is treating him as an animal and property. That is not civil in any way, shape, or form. And I don't know how they can even give words to that when they know that's what's going on in this country every day. It's sick of a monumental nature.
Absolutely, I agree, and that's what we're getting to is the degree that it changes over time because of the tyrants that are in rule, because of the wish upon the people that think that that's the law for them. That is not a law for you. When you placate that you're a good man and you have good morals, yet you think the moral system that you're operating under is a good system and it's okay to do such things, lock people up for debts that are false, then you've been disillusioned yourself, and you're one of those very mechanisms that they use. The useful idiot, the voters. People should be catching on to this by now, but I just don't see why they don't.
You can educate your children. Here, they could train them. And you see the lady here in the statue of education, and she is opening the Word of God or the Book of Knowledge, and she has got the
Word of God or the Book of Knowledge, not the Book of Public Education. That's where we go wrong with our children. And again, just like the gathering as groups and adults, that's imposing a morality on them that they should already have. So if we can understand that we are born into this world with a morality in our hearts already, and imbue that talent of recognition of care, love, and concern for others, then that child is going to grow up a lot better, I think. And those other educational things are going to come along with it. You know, when he's developing his talent, they're going to be needing to learn how to read, write, and do arithmetic eventually. But we need to help them to build up that strong spiritual talent of being kind and considerate to everybody first.
wreath of
in my opinion, of course.
victory she's wearing, about a 25-year-old woman. She is educating her children, and she is sitting in victory. Why is she sitting in victory? Because she has trained her children up in the way they should go. And
train a child in the way he should go, and he will not waver. And again, so if you want your children to grow up with a good moral foundation as you have, I suggest you keep them out of the public education system and teach your children as it was founded on this nation. We didn't have public education before this nation. We had military training in various different armies around the world, but the education always came from within the families.
Yeah, indoctrination's nothing new either, for what it's worth.
Right. Yeah, it's the indoctrination starts at the national level. Everybody wanted to placate this popularity game of growing up as a resident, and one day you might be P resident, the prime resident.
prepared them so that the next generation that came after them would know the strategy of how to carry on the truth and carry on a free civilization. Isn't that amazing?
And what's on her side over here?
Over here, you see her training her child, and she has a book in her one hand, and then he has a scroll where he is writing on the other. And this is youth, trained in their youth. It was the parents' responsibility to educate. And so this would be the mother training up a child in the way you should.
It's the parents' responsibility to educate your children. Why did we turn around and today we have people believe it's the government's responsibility? Why do we do that? That is false. That is because you have somebody that stepped in and said, hey, we will educate them. Therefore, it's not their responsibility. It is a comfort and convenience that you gave up your responsibility.
You know what I think is interesting is that they had just left England and left this top-down government system. So when they got here, their idea of education wasn't send your kids off to a government school to educate them. It was the parents' responsibility to do this, particularly because their worldview was different than the government's worldview, which would have been, no, you're nobody, you're a slave. You just lay down on your back and do whatever the king says, which is sort of the attitude that we get in most governments today, is that you just do whatever the government says, whereas they're saying, no, it's our responsibility as parents to educate our kids and to teach them faith and internal morality and to understand the importance of fair, just, and merciful laws.
And it's passed down from generation to generation. And if you see on the other side, you'll see how the grandfathers played a role. For it's not just the father. Of course, the father and the mother are the key educators. But the key is the hoary heads. Those are the older ones who also have a role. Because you see
And this is why I say we shouldn't have kindergartens, we shouldn't have those preschools, and we shouldn't have retirement homes. Okay?
Yeah, so I'm aware of a situation where there's a young child, believe she's younger than 10. She doesn't want to go to school, and the parents want her to go to this school, and I'm trying to help them see that maybe you need to keep her home and teach her yourselves. I see the error my ways. I did not see that when I was younger, and I should have, you know.
Many
could have, should have, would have, but at the same time, I see it now.
Yeah, a lot of people don't want to see that as a solution because, again, that puts the responsibility back on them. That's what people are doing. They're getting lazy. They think it's convenient to live in these modern times with all these technologies and everything that make it so convenient for them to just slough off their responsibility.
Well, now I see it as crazy because I don't want my child or her child being indoctrinated in this freaking mess. And it's almost like her child's given her a warning. Like, look, she knows it's not a good place for her. She doesn't want to be there. You know, it's not just about not wanting to skip school. It's those guys that didn't go to school, the Tom Sawyers of our day. You know what I mean? They had it. They had something they knew. They knew on some level that it wasn't where they needed to be.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sometimes you have to think people like, you know, Tom Sawyer being a fictional one, but the kind of people that we're talking about there, some of those people are a lot smarter than the people in school. Now, I'll tell you a story. Of course, it's just a transference of something Samuel Clemens put in there as a background story. So it's not true, but Tom Sawyer in the story was out whitewashing his aunt's fence, and it was such an honor for him to whitewash this fence. At least that's what he placated to the children that walked by and saw him doing it and felt sorry for him. And he swapped it all around and said, "Oh no, this is a great honor." And next thing you know, those kids are dinging shit out of their pocket to give to Tom so they can take upon the honor of helping him paint the fence. Therefore, he was taking advantage of a principal concept of morals, of doing something good for somebody else and being rewarded for it through your pride and emotions, while he's sitting back there collecting the treasures.
Just like patriotism. Just like patriotism.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The guy with the beard here, he's the old guy. And what do you see his left hand pointing to?
There's a book, and it looks like you got the 10 Commandments again.
10 Commandments and an open Bible. Okay? And so he, being older and wiser, he knows the commandments, he knows the Word of God, and then he is pointing to that. And then on the other side, what do you see? Okay.
That's the world.
The world, right. So he is teaching the younger generation, both his daughter and his grandchildren, how the world works from a biblical perspective.
And that's why we need the older generations like that involved in the education. We start sending our children to these public schools with these younger teachers that have a dogmatic political view or something, or they're struggling to keep their job or whatever. And they're doing the best they can. But when you put it in the hands of the elders, it's no longer the best they can, it's the best there is.
All of this leads to something, Kirk, and that's, you see the strategy building from the internal to the external, to the law, to education, to pass it on to the next generation. And what are they passing on? They're passing on liberty. And this is what is the result of living out that strategy. And his name is Liberty. We call him Liberty Man. Now, this guy is not a guy you want to mess with, right? And he's seated in liberty.
Okay, explain who this guy is. Liberty Man.
Liberty Man, or the liberty hero that he represents, is the fruit. He is the result of obeying the matrix of liberty that you see on this monument. And he is seated in liberty. Now, I want you to be careful to notice these details. Notice that he's holding broken chains in his left hand. Notice that he has, where the chains were, bound to his legs. Notice
that kind of remind you, Dean, of your thing there and finding faith in your adult life and realizing, hey, you're not shackled? No, we must have lost him there. But anyway, that's what I was thinking of, Dean, when Dean was talking about realizing he had faith in his adult life. And, you know, I claim Dean is one of the lions of the house of Judah. He's one that roars. He's doing a great job. And he's a man of liberty in my eyes. He's broken those chains, and he's standing there with a sword, and he's willing to do what it takes. And that's what we're looking at. We have to go through a process of realization.
that he is now seated in liberty. He's got that good look on his face like, listen, I'm free. But I'm looking out, defending my liberty, but I'm free. And notice the claw that is on his right shoulder. That claw relates to a skin that goes around to the left here, and you see a lion's head, an entire lion skin. That ultimately represented the lion of the English tyrant back in those days.
So he is.
And that's again, a biblical repeat. History repeats itself, walking into the lion's den. See, that's what it's all about. History does repeat itself, and it is a narcissistic view of the victor over the victim. That's why we're looking at the chains being broke, and that's the point of liberty, is to break the bonds of the slavery that bind us in this false education and the false patriotism.
Slain the lion.
He's slain the lion, and that's what it says here on the left. Tyranny is defeated, and you see Liberty Man standing over tyranny with his foot on the chest of tyranny. He's holding tyranny down. And again, the Pilgrims won this victory without violence of any kind, except living out God's principles. And it shows you that if you do it right, you can be strong as an individual, you can defend liberty, and if need be, you can fight. You don't want to fight, but if you have to, you're ready. So Kirk, this is that recipe. This is that strategy, that matrix that was what built America.
And that last one there was peace. See, in your liberty, you have to take the tyranny and dispose of it so you can maintain peace.
Well, of course. How can I have the right to do what I want to do if I'm busy imposing that on somebody else? I mean, that just is a conundrum. That's a dichotomy. That's not the same thing. You can't do it to others and expect it for yourself at the same time. That's just insanity.
That's how we know that those that expect that law will be applied to them, when they turn around and apply it to others, that tells us they're the slave and the slave driver at the same time. They're playing into this system of moral laws that aren't made for the people that have morals already.
In the history of the world, the one strategy that has brought more liberty, more prosperity, and more joy than any other is this strategy. Why would you go anywhere else?
So that's in Plymouth, Maine, or Plymouth, Massachusetts, folks. I hope to be able to one day go out there and check that out. And
remember, that's also above Plymouth Rock.
Yes, and that's the first landing of the Pilgrims, the Mayflower, and all that, and that's the true foundation of this country, as it goes to the quote Caucasian, European, whatever. But again, this is a set of morals that I think even the native peoples had. You know, they brought their people up in the same way, teaching them that there were certain things that were within their bounds, and they didn't have any written laws. And this is why I say our history is the narcissist victor over the victim, because most cultures before all of this started taking place had their own oral histories, and the oral histories stood better than any other writing because the writings were known to be fiction. Whereas the story from Grandpa sitting around the campfire were known to be embedded in truth, morals, and abundance, let's say. I don't want to say morals, actually, because some of the events that those, again, like our history shows the victor over the victim, you know, they're still in those oral histories. But the difference is that they're passing down to different generations that might be able to see a greater depth in the story. Whereas in the literal written language, when we write these laws, people think, well, we can't change that law until we change the paper, the words that are written down. No, the change comes in your heart, people. Open panel, what's going on, guys? What do you think?
Well, certainly. I mean, the struggle I talked about from the get-go also includes the ego. And the ego just wants and will take without care for what others need or anything. You know what I mean? And it's learning to not let that rule the day, because that is not better for your community, I guess, for lack of a better term, family, any of those.
Absolutely. And unindoctrinated brings a good point, too. We all see history changing from week to week in the present time. Where do you think that starts and stops? I don't believe any of the narratives, especially before 1900. Today we have a president that is incompetent, a vice president that is incompetent, and a past president that called the vice president, or called the president vice president, and said he was just joking when it was a slip of the tongue. That's what he's been all along. It's actually been Kamala Harris doing everything, or as a puppet anyway. But what we're looking at now is a president nominee that was never nominated. What are the morals behind that? Are we no longer going to follow that law? I mean, it's written down. There's a process, and yet that process wasn't followed, and yet somehow she's the president nominee. So we really have to think about this and what it really means, and understand that if you want to play in that game, play in that game. That's what you're doing. And I call a lot of people bitch-ass slaves because they still run around with that ID. And I don't care who you are. I am firm on that. We have to understand that church that John was talking about earlier is a gathering of people, and we need to come together and merge as people. You have a republic if you can keep it, and the only way you can keep that republic is by knowing the law. That's the only true form of a republic government, is a people that knows the law. Go ahead.
But Keith, government is the church. for a lot of people.
Right.
Okay, the cops, the courts, the process. So they're in a strange way happy with it. I don't know
That's
how else to say it.
that's that voluntary servitude without knowing that they're serving. They honestly believe that they're supporting this government, but that they're free from the government while they hold that government ID. You can't.
I think the problem is they think that's what love is. That we're loving our fellow man by keeping them under our thumb to make them do what we want to do, but that's not love. And love is the law they're supposed to be following. What church has you ever heard that didn't preach love as well? Because that's what the Bible preaches. Is, I mean, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And when you look at the history of the laws and everything, 1665 we had it was the 5 Mile Act, where they started going against the conformists or the nonconformists that refused to live in the corporate boundaries and be a voluntary slave, literally. And then in 1666, you had the Sedekv Act, and that is the birth certificate where the record transfer. Let's call it the record transfer. We know it as birth certificate enumeration at birth today, but it was the records transfer from the church to a local polity military unit. The Great Fire of London, 1664. Nonconformist Act, 1665. Sedekv Act, 1666. Now, you would think that the Great Fire of London was just something minor as a fire incident, but I play the idea that they had the plague going on at the same time, and so they were going to burn the rats out of the city. In so doing, they had to transfer the records from the church so they could burn the church too. So they transferred the records so they could be maintained, and then burned all the property, get rid of the plague. And that was the bringing on of the nonconformist and the Sedekv Act. It's already done, so let's just go ahead and write it down. Well, it's convenient that you keep the records safe, because otherwise the people dying of the plague might not be able to keep track of them. Somebody might come to the church and steal them. Whereas if they're a national treasure, who said it? Jason Crapo said, "A nation reject he that lives," and that's what they're doing. They're denying you as a living soul and playing the record. They're going to the history record all the time. Well, don't you know history says this, so it's got to be this way? No, things change, and that's why I don't listen to history, and we need to change. And by everybody going back to history, we keep repeating it. And we have greetings, Russ. How you doing tonight?
Good, brother. How are you guys? Everybody doing well?
Well.
That's good. That's good. Good
How
to
about
see
yourself?
y'all.
Been a while.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I just kind of been, self-reflecting. I'm all about that spiritual foundation. Man's got to know him. Man's got to know himself before he can figure out anybody else. So it's kind of where I'm at with it.
That's what we were talking about. We were talking. I don't know how much you've watched, but the Matrix of Liberty is the tallest solid granite national monument on the land here, and it's out in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and it gives a moral construct of how we can bring up our children so that we don't lose that morality. And yet somehow we placed a government body in place and they've lost all moral concept, period.
Well, I think that's the key right there is that moral concept. I mean, if we go back to a lot of this, even the local governments and the establishment of that moral concept in the men and women leading in leadership, it's just, I mean, I don't, from a world of you know, I don't like to get into religion and all of that stuff because I'm really faith-based, but from that standpoint, all contracts should be negotiated from that particular standpoint. Period. The end. I don't care what anybody in your ego thinks. All contracts should be negotiated for the benefit of the whole as a community. I mean,
and that's that. If you want equity, you must first come with equity.
that's why I'm done out here on YouTube. I mean, it's just I just see a whole lot of looping and nobody. It seems a lot of people dwelling in the past and nobody really moving forward.
Yeah, I hear you. I've got my I've got 3 birth certificates ready to start moving on those. I'm going to get one of them authenticated at the state and federal level, and then transfer all 3 of them with a directive to the Department of Human Services to use the authenticated one to do their part of recovery of the estate, to transfer all those titles and everything to the United States for clearing. And then, of course, one of them's going to go to the Postal Service as an exchange means for indemnification under a agriculture and land stewardship certificate.
You think these people are going to, you know, acknowledge what you're talking about? I find all of them to be very incompetent.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
there's
that's
not much you can say for them. I mean, come on, man.
And that's why I say the education, knowing how this stuff works, is imperative. Let no tongue shall prosper against you, and you shall rise up against any judgment. And so we have to do that as a matter of righteousness. And in that's that verse I tell you that tells us that we have to learn the tongues. So when I wrote my tort claim out and sent it to the governor almost 2 months ago, it's coming up 2 months Monday or something. I was off. I thought it was only 3 or 4 weeks, but it's been almost 2 months already. So I'm going to go ahead with my second notice. I haven't heard back from him yet, and I doubt I'll hear back from him on Monday. So on Monday, when the 2 months is up, I'm going to write him a second notice, a default notice, opportunity to remedy, and then just keep going with the administrative process. I'm going to give them a certain amount of time on their second notice, and then, of course, give them a third notice. And when they fail that third notice, now I can file a full-fledged claim in international court.
So I'm thinking I need to be doing something similar, but writing to the representatives and telling them, look, I'm going to need a private law that covers this bill in equity because they've already defaulted on my claim to risk management. So, you know, basically They admitted they owe me this money. Now I need you to just figure out a way to funnel it to my account. Thank you.
Right. And that's part of that remedy thing. When we get those titles set up, the birth certificates, and so we can correct the record and have any transfers or any credits that are remaining transferred in a merger with the new estate. That new estate is going to need to be recognized, and that's that House of Representatives and Senate meeting before Congress to provide a private relief law for the Keith Orland Little estate, now established, and here's the evidence with your Postal Service. It's tied directly to the general law, and it's not a particular public forum, so it needs its own private relief law.
So would that postmaster, Keith, wouldn't that be tied with that SS-16 with the establishment of the local government within those counties?
No, that's going to be with your slugs, state and local government securities. See, they're doing the blue sky securities laws at the state level, and what happens is they pool everything, and anything in an administrative court, while it's being adjudicated, those things have to be held by the federal government until the case is finalized. Once the case is finalized, the funds for that case can be released. But it's done through the state first, and then it's pooled, and so there's no recognition of it independently at the federal level. It's recognized at the federal level as a pool. The only place it's recognized at the independent level is the state level, where it's entered in and pooled under the state's blue sky securities laws. And that's why I say, when you're filling out these documentations, make sure you're looking at them, see what their official use is, and find out if there's an OMB number on it. If it's an OMB number, then you're dealing with a federal entity, and that's a federal security operation. Now you can that's when I suggest if you're getting one of those, I suggest doing the line item veto and underwriting and stuff. When you're getting things from the state, they may say for official use or something, but they don't have an O&B number on it. So there's something off there. And the off thing is that they're pooling those kind of instruments at a car dealership. You have 10 people go into the dealership and fill out loan documents throughout the day. Certain number of them, most of them are going to be approved. Not too many people are ever turned away for those things. So they pool them. At the end of the week, they're all pooled together. That's a mass investment. That's a large pooled investment, but it's done again under the state's blue sky security laws. Never going to reach the federal level. But that's why it's important to hand that birth certificate over to the federal level. It's supposed to be registered in the United States, but it's never been.
Well, I get you there. What on all of those, when you say that's all pulled together, say for like a week, they take all that and they pull that together. Well, if we go back to that faith base and how this was all established and that moral concept, right? Would that be a healthy business practice? Myself personally, I don't think so.
No, your best personal moral business practice is the privity. That's what contracts are. The first main element of contracts is privity.
So so what I'm trying to ask is, or trying to get at really, is if they're not doing the jobs properly, we got to go through all this process, and it doesn't seem the process is actually the basic principles that we should be running under anyway, is it? To be pulling all these this way, or
no.
I mean, I think the system needs to be shut down, and people really need to know what they're doing before they do anything. And let's don't do nothing unless we all move forward.
No, it doesn't need to be shut down. The law is made for the
shut down.
Right. The law is made for the lawless. So we need to let the lawless use that lawless law, and that's what the surety is all about. But he who hateth suretyship is sure, and he doesn't take upon suretyship. That's the moral concept. I'm not taking upon a suretyship. I'm going to do this privately, and we'll work it out. We don't need your third party intervening. If we have a problem, we're two grown men. We can solve it ourselves. We'll work it out. That's the moral construct.
But all this government comes from people voting, and some of these people, as far as I'm concerned, probably shouldn't have much of an opinion on which direction we go forward in.
They should.
Let's just be. I mean, I try to look at everything from a single aspect and a faith base. You know what I'm saying? And try not to group it together, because when we group it together, that's when all those negative adaptations from other people's opinions and what someone thinks rather than what they know.
Right.
And that's a huge problem.
And Tribe says, can judicial officers preside over private matters in a public court? No. Soon as a judicial officer, as a judge sitting on a bench, presides over private matters, he's acting on the behalf of the state, because only the state has powers to convert through forfeiture and seizure private property to public property. So if a judge does any of that, which they do all the time, that's the problem. They're acting actually in their private capacity, and that's
they're still taking under the Fifth Amendment as well, because they're doing it under the name of government, so they still owe just compensation.
Right. Yeah, and that's the point we're making with this. I'm sure you're familiar with the Chevron doctrine that was overturned here recently, Dean, and that is that these administrators have been given over the last few decades the ability to discern for themselves whether it was public property or private property. And if you're presenting a residential ID, they've been discerning it's public property just because it's in your possession.
Well, is those master commissioners working with those administrative judges given all these powers?
Absolutely, through the municipality.
I noticed the master commissioners are advertising letters of credit now. So
yeah,
that's insane.
That's done through the municipal codes. the municipal bonds, the slugs, state and local government securities based on that residential ID. Everybody's considered to be a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent.
I've been sending them all nice notices all over the country.
Yeah. Hope that helps you, tribe. Oops, looks like we lost Dean. Core and non-core issues, yep. And that brings us to the end of the stream for tonight. You got anything on the way out? I'm going to give it a chance to see if Dean makes it back, or John even, but.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I caught you a little earlier tonight. Good being back up here, and I'll catch you again, I'm sure.
Yep. Normally I do them at, normally I do them at 9 o'clock, but my schedule's been off here lately, and like I said earlier, I had to lay down for a nap.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where it seems like it's a big old rat race when we know none of the business dealings are not of, let's just say, of equitable measures. So therefore, I just see it's one big loop of nothing burger.
Yeah.
Unless people create that change within themselves and be part of that change.
Well, and the nothing burger, I don't know if it's so much of a nothing burger. I see where you're going there, but the thing is, I see it going farther and farther downhill, and we really need to start stepping up. Like I've mentioned several times here, we had a civil rights movement, we had a feminist rights movement, we had a gay rights movement, we had a transgender movement. Next thing you know, we're going to have a transhuman movement, and that's the insanity we're looking at. If you don't understand it, please stop doing what you're doing and learn it, because otherwise you're going to get into the same boat that all these younger people are with these Gen Z and these new wave kids coming out thinking that you can use all these different kinds of pronouns and stuff. And that's because we have teachers in the school like that. How do we end up?
They're going along with this system. And when you stand up to this system, be warned, anybody listening, they will come down on you. That's why I don't have a house anymore. They stole my fucking home, because that's how bad it is when you start standing up to these people. They don't like you. They're going to hurt you. They can hurt you their legal ways, and they'll do it. And anything I've done back, no good. It's just how it happens. But that's the price I'm willing to pay to be true to myself and live this life. That who cares? I'm not going to live it on their terms. But it's a battle. We're put into this war. I didn't ask for this. This is what they want. It's crazy.
Well, you look, I mean, you think about it. You get all these ones that we talked about earlier that I said that get to voice an opinion in a vote for all of these elected officials, and then they turn around. These elected officials are giving these folks handouts. I mean, what are they going to do when the top is gone, the handouts are gone, and you only got the real son of a bitches left? That's what I want to know. What are you going to do when you just got the real son of a bitches left? Because most of them ain't going to know how to act. They ain't going to know which way to turn. And the pacifier's gone. The lifeline is gone.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at, is that lifeline, like I said, is the education. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
Absolutely.
So that lifeline you're talking about is the education. And when people just sit there and do what they will and think
I got to refute what he says, though. Not that we're not all wired that way. Some of us are wired to do what it takes, regardless of the situation. Well, and those are the people that, yes, I understand you need those kind of people. That's who you're not talking about. Not everybody is just taking the pay.
That are taking the handouts and are comfortably numb right now in this system. That's the ones I'm talking about.
Right.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm looking for my compensation from this system, which may or may not seem like a handout, but I also know I gave to them as well. They took that money out of my sweat equity. So they made my labor an article of commerce, for lack of a better term, which allegedly is a crime.
Well, I mean, they did. That's what they did to a lot of people in 2020 when they deemed us all non-essential. We wasn't corporate bitches, so your families don't matter. You ain't got to worry about feeding your families.
Well, it's hard to sit there and look at others and go, they're taking and not giving, when I'm in the point of now where I feel like I've given my whole life, I'm ready to start taking. So, but the reality is we're both in the same position of taking, and how do you discern one from the other so easily would be the question I would ask you.
Right. And then, Dean, just so you're aware that the principle in that birth certificate I'm working on is Revelations 18:6. Reward her even as she rewarded you. See, you were conferred a nationality. You were awarded. You were made a award. Okay? Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double under her, double according to her works. So when we go through correcting the record, we find out what the record is valued at for everything that we put into it, and we put a value double that and give it to the United States.
I did that authentication, and I had like 3 or 4 copies of those things floating around, and I didn't even know what to do with them, though. And again, if that's my ignorance of the law, isn't that interesting? How are you supposed? Nobody knows about these processes, but the government did something. They gave me something back. I did a Newman report, same thing, ribbons and grommets. They did this. Public servants did this, so it must mean something. I still couldn't tell you what it means to this day, though, but I got it. Well, what do you do with that?
Well, part of it is that I can't remember.
Say it has something to do with leadership.
Well, it has to do with the way you bond it, the public bonding or private bonding, and the public bonding is done through the Securities Exchange Commission, and the private bonding is done through the Treasury. We did a video here not too long ago on 31 CFR 363.10. What is a Treasury direct account? And 31 CFR 363.6. What terms do I need to know? In there, it talked about the authentication, the beneficiary, and all this. And that's the true transfer agent that we're supposed to be dealing with on the private side, the Treasury.
Yeah, they threatened me when I tried to do that Treasury direct stuff. That was my experience. And then when I responded to their threats with, bullshit, you're going to do this, then then they just go silent. I don't know how to force it because they're somewhere else. I don't know where they are.
Well, is that a letter of credit through the Treasury, or?
No, he was trying to do the birth certificate thing, and see, that's why I keep telling everybody. I think truly we need to set it out with a set of directives for intent to transfer the title. Because when we understand that expenses incidental to transfer a title to the agency, expenses incidental to transfer a title to the United States, and expenses incidental to transfer to the United States Postal Service, and it's the Postal Service whose obligation is supported by their capital, and their capital is equity. So they're supposed to hold.
All I want is credits on account. I want them to make sure this account that I have, when I swipe that card, I get what I want, whether it's FRN, whatever I feel I need, that's what they're going to supply. And it just needs to be there on that credit so that I can access it when and where I need it, basically.
So would that be in equity, though, Keith? And you said how that is in equity. Well, wouldn't that common good be in that leadership role in the business aspect of that? Wouldn't that fall into that?
And that's why you have to be able to do this yourself.
I would say it falls into the trustee role that they have to secure rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what I would suggest.
And you have to learn how to give them the directive.
I also thought in the beginning was Wyrd, so I shouldn't have to write any damn thing down. I should just be able to speak it and articulate it, and it should just flow from me to that public servant, little bitch-ass slave, to do good works in that forward movement of whatever that commercial agreement is.
Yep. And the problem is,
I don't see it that difficult.
Well, the problem is these people have been trained as minimalists to do what they do, and that's it, not to know anything.
Well, they're looking profit as for themselves.
Right. That's what the public education system is about, is to teach people to remember to just do what they're told and not to think for themselves. And it's sad, very sad.
It is.
And with that, we are done for the stream. You guys got any final words on the way out?
Be the change you wish to see, folks. Dean,
Did you leave a link to that that video we watched? Because I'd like to see that. I want to watch more of that. That Liberty statue or whatever. I'm gonna have to look that up.
All right, Keith. Everybody be good. Many blessings to everybody. Much love.
Peace.
Peace.
Let me pull that up for you, Dean, and I'll drop that in the chat for everybody. Thanks for the reminder. And it's called The Plan Hidden in Plain Sight. And there's a link for everybody down below. And there's one for you in the back chat there, Dean. And what do you got on the way out, Dean?
No, just peace, man. Thanks. I appreciate you having me on here. You sparked me with your from the get-go. You got me wanting to show up, and I appreciate that. So I appreciate you, brother.
You bet. God bless. And you guys know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. That's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you, and have a good night, folks. We'll see everybody next time. Be sure to hit them buttons.